Hi everyone, it's Rob Watson, the module leader for TECH1502, and this is the overview summary of the 24th lecture. So we've got through a year of lectures and studies, and I bet once we've got the final piece of coursework out the way, we'll be ready for a good break. There's plenty of reading we can be doing over the summer. This is, as last week, I've brought forward a lecture from next year to look at the idea of what community media how we can think about community media in relation to community development and the social issues. But in this session, what I want to talk about is how we think about community media as kind of a, what is the process of community development? What is it that we need to look for that kind of inform the practices that give rise to, if you like, a resilient and enabled sense of community. So if you want to read in more detail any of the material that is available for next year, it's on the DMU Commons Wiki. Look for the TECH1503 section. Just go to wiki.our.dmu.ac.uk and look for the TECH1503, and that's community media production. And the lecture notes and the workshop notes are all there. They're pretty much going to, I might change the order of some, but they're pretty much going to stay the same for next year. I need to get on with building some case studies and some examples that we can use, and as well as kind of underpinning some of the kind of theories and ideas with these things. So, okay, let's focus on this lecture. So we're thinking about social change. And one of the challenges with a community development model is we're thinking there are different ways of evaluating social change, and what are the kind of things that we look to that indicate that there is a sense of renewal if our society is becoming less cohesive and people have less of an appreciation or understanding or a sense of trust in the present social arrangement. What is it that we can look to that indicates how we might bring about change in these areas? And kind of the questions that we might ask is kind of what role can community media play in, I've got written here, advancing the decline of social well-being. I think that should be resisting or arresting the decline of social well-being. I must make a note to change that, see if anybody spots it. What are the stories that we need to tell that explain how the process and the contribution that community media can make to social change and positive, constructive, sustainable social change, and what's the best? What are the consequences of those stories? How do we know we've made a difference? So the process for this is to think pragmatically. So what I'll do is I'll introduce some thinking which informs my work, which is the pragmatist tradition, which, if you're going to sum it up, you ask the question, what's the difference that makes the difference? And if it doesn't make a difference, why are we thinking it? Why are we using it? It's kind of, we really need to keep revising everything that we do to say, what difference did this make? And we might have grand theories and we might be able to explain things in perpetuity, but we live in the here and now, and we need solutions in the here and now, and we need to anticipate changes that will take place in the medium term and then the longer term. So what do we need to do to establish them? We can't wait for somebody to, for the Vulcans to arrive from outer space to explain to us how we should restructure our society in order to be able to meet our needs in the future. We have to find this within ourselves. So it's very kind of humanistic form of analysis. And I'll draw on the work of John Dewey, Richard Rorty, and Stuart Pearce. Stuart Pearce? That's terrible, isn't it? I can't, where's it gone out my head for that? That's always happened. My memory for names is terrible. So kind of what kind of pragmatic stories can we tell? And this comes from an idea of thinking about what's called the paradigms, the framework of thinking that enables us to evaluate and understand the context and the social setup that we're part of, and to recognise that the social setup and the thinking about that social setup changes. And as you change your thinking, and as you change the language, and as you change the framework, also your understanding of the world changes with that as well, because we see the world through a mediated framework, if you like. So we'll talk about this and look at this in terms of what the potential is for, you know, the new emerging framework that we really do need to be very quickly establishing and building into our media processes. You know, it can't all be about celebrity gossip and, you know, shout outs to your chums. And, you know, there's a reality that we need to face, which is that, you know, kind of, have we got the resources to sustain ourselves? Are we using our existing resources effectively? Are we using them responsibly and sustainably? Are we resilient to future change? And many communities around the world are being impacted and have been impacted by climate change and by quite dramatic change in economic circumstances and cultural circumstances and conflict. And community media is part of the solution to those problems. It's regarded, community media around the world is regarded as an effective tool, and it's appreciated very much more than it is maybe in the UK at times. So we're thinking about kind of how do we think about what community is going to do and undertake, and how do we think that this might be distributed in an equitable and socially just way? What do we need to look to? Now, we can regard society and culture and our lives within that society as something which is akin to a system, if you like, and like if you think of it like a circuit board or a computer program. But that's not the only way to think about society. In fact, there's many traps and many difficulties that kind of thinking has brought about because we're not looking holistically or ecologically at the world, and we're not looking at our interdependent relationships. We're just looking at profit motive and GDP, gross domestic product, and, you know, using resources in squandering resources effectively, and not looking for efficiencies and self-management, if you like. So we'll look at this in terms of thinking about the kind of policy approaches that community media really should be part of and should be well regarded as part of the solution. And I think my mission, if I was going to describe one way of thinking of a mission that's evolving in my thinking, and I hope that you have an appreciation for this when you graduate, is that when anybody ever sets up a campaign group or a project or working in a government department, a policy initiative, a social service in some way, that community media, healthcare service, education services, criminal justice services, that community media is brought in from day one at the beginning to start the process and contribute to the process of planning, rather than just being seen as, if you like, as an adjunct at the end, something in which people are given it's kind of like a marketing exercise at the end. We do all the work and then we say, okay, well, now how can we promote it with people? That's not the issue. That's not the way that we think about community media. Community media has to be at the heart of the decision and the resource allocation process, because it's important that people are engaged and involved in that process and not just kind of patronised, as that kind of Sherry Arnstein ladder of participation indicates. So there's a kind of a shifting of perspectives, if you like, in the way that what community media offers. And what we want to do is kind of explore that. So next year you're going to be working with John to produce community media cafes, and we're going to, actually our thinking at the moment is that we should do more of them and get you in there more often. We just need to try and sort that out and get that timetabled and scheduled and as such. The second, I think, approach is to having more open, deliberative debates. So maybe we should be recording more podcasts and more sessions where we can express our views and our opinions as we're learning, as we're going along, based on our experience. Anyway, the notes for this session are up on the DMU Commons wiki. Just go to wiki.our.dmu.ac.uk. If you want to carry on the conversation, go over to talk.our.dmu.ac.uk. That's the discourse platform that we use, which is a kind of message board, chat forum, stripped away of all the data that you get from Facebook and Google and things like that. So it's just a very simple way of exchanging messages and sharing ideas. There's plenty of topics on there at the moment. If you want to add more than welcome to. Right, 24 lectures done. That's good for this year, I think. A bit of a sense of achievement. So see you at the lecture.